welcome to In This Corner. Once again, I am Cyrus Fees, and this is officially going to be season 2. We kind of had like a season 1.5 with the Cain Velasquez and Shoney Carter and a few other ones, but I'm fully ready, fully invested to get back into the mix here, and we got some great guests lined up for you in this season, none bigger than the one I'm about to introduce, and I'm sure he'll agree with that. So let's get right down to business and welcome the one and only Westland gangster, undefeated, incomparable, Chael Sonnen, back to In This Corner. Chael, welcome back.
What's happening, Fees? I didn't know you caught up with Cain and Shoney. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to those. Shoney Carter's an interesting guy.
Yes, he is. He really is, man. Lots of stories. It was just a whole experience just talking to Shoney for about an hour and a half. That was a lot. And then, talking to Cain before all the craziness has ensued in the last few months. So we'll get into that, but welcome back once again. And, there's been so many changes since the last time this podcast was on air. Speaking of which, we have a new organization in town that we both work for, that being Eagle FC, now doing U.S. events out of Miami in their very own arena. Very well handled. Of course, Khabib being the guy running the show, Rizvan and a bunch of these guys, Ali. And it really has been quite incredible. We're 2 shows in right now, Chael. And I just wanted to ask you, what kind of led you to sign on with Eagle? Was it just the money, or did you see something in this organization that maybe you haven't seen in others?
Well, I like to participate. I mean, I love my time in the sport. My time in the sport will end the way that it began, which as a fan, Fees, I'm a fan. I'm watching fight, or I'm visiting with someone or talking with people like you. Pretty much that's, my number one hobby. So a chance to participate. It's very hard to come by in this sport. Unless you're in the ring throwing punches and having punches thrown at you, it's just hard to participate in. I like coaching. I like working with the guys, but, I like to be right there with you. I like to have a great seat, be involved, bring some of that energy and information to the audience. So that's really how I got there. And yeah, 2 shows in, you can feel something. And I'm not a guy that talks about energy and Zen, but I do in this case. There's a feeling when you're at Eagle FC, and you can just tell that they're going to be around. I've been at a lot of firsts. Strike Force comes to mind. WEC comes to mind. All of the Affliction shows. It felt different at Eagle. And when each fight ended, I did think it was very interesting that every single fighter, to a man, turned to Khabib and said, please have me back. There was something about that experience that the fighters themselves enjoyed.
Yeah, there is something about that. I would agree. I think all the fighters really respect Khabib a lot. But then on the same token, we have this awesome broadcast team. And not only are they fighting in front of Khabib, they're also fighting in front of yourself, Henry Cejudo, and then usually for the main card, we got Kamaru Usman, who's number 1 pound for pound right now. Do you feel like kind of these fighters are stepping it up a little bit, and that there's just a different feeling in the air fighting in front of just all-time greats?
I think that's right. And then a lot of their contracts also, there's a few of the staple guys who you could probably imagine that have 3-fight deals. 3s is most of I've ever heard. Diego Sanchez made that claim. Ray Borg talked about it, but a lot of those guys won one-offs. A lot of them, it really was the Ultimate Fighter all over again, in that you're fighting not to get in the house, but to get into the organization, or at least to stay within the organization. A lot of those guys were debuting. Hey, I got a 1-fight deal. My opponent has a 1-fight deal. One of us probably isn't going to be here. It got extra competitive, but everybody's still left with a smile and a handshake. That's very unique for a Saturday night or a Friday night cage fight. But there was just something about it where the camaraderie was different. The tension was less. The action was packed. By the way, what about when you asked me, was I just there for the money? What if I would have said yes? Oh, yes, Fees. I don't care about it all. And I'm only here to get $40,000. I mean, don't you think? Well, I look like a real jerk, wouldn't I?
$40,000. Holy crap. I need to talk to my representation.
Are you getting less than that? Oh, I should. See, I've already said too much. I knew it was a slippery slope. You were setting me up, Fees.
Yeah, I was. There's been a lot of big signings, Chael, and you alluded to a few of them. Of course, Diego Sanchez, Ray Borg, Kevin Lee. It seems like, with a guy like Ray Borg, that he's completely revitalized his career. They're uncovering things about these fighters. Like on our last event, 46, not only did we hear about Ray Borg's family, you and I are both fathers, so we understand the situation he has going on, where his son, I believe, has hydrocephalus. very serious condition. Then on top of that, if you don't want to get even more interested into it, you talk about Irwin Rivera. That's a whole nother situation. We're talking about a guy that literally stabbed his two sisters while they slept, was thrown in jail. Due to insanity, he was able to get released and an actual diagnosis for bipolar. That caught a lot of flack online. I will tell you this, a lot of flack online. I don't know how much you pay attention to it, but I paid attention to it. And it was a lot. What did you make of the whole situation with Irwin Rivera?
That was tough. And, that's a real family matter. This is sensitive where I'd almost kind of rather not put my nose into it, but I was forced the same way as you were because we were sitting there covering it. Just to add one piece to your story for anybody that hasn't heard this, of the two sisters who were both stabbed, both were there supporting him. And one of the sisters was in his corner. She got in the ring and celebrated him afterwards. So that is the feel good part of it. I'm very happy that family was able to look past this. Hopefully Rivera got, the help that he needed. But from a PR standpoint, there was probably ways that he could have done it better. I mean, it's a rough situation and we dealt with it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it certainly got attention, whether it's good attention or bad attention, regardless. And I like that, Eagle's willing to take that chance and put the story out there and just hit it head on instead of kind of dancing around it. I thought that was pretty interesting. Our guy, Henry Cejudo, he's right there on the commentary desk with us. Getting to know this kid, I had never really talked to him before, and he is such an insightful guy, extremely insightful when it comes to fighting. I like his philosophies when it comes to fighting. A lot of fighters are going to his gym right now because they obviously see this as well. What have you made out of Henry Cejudo kind of as this coach and commentator? And of course, we want to see him back in the cage as well.
Well, Triple C is a real triple threat now. I mean, the success that he's had in coaching, he is a world champion. You have guys that coach their entire life. They dedicate everything to it that never have a world champion. He's already got two champions. He's got Whaley and he's got Figueiredo. I mean, I'm just saying he's cloaked in success. He's a great fighter that's teasing a comeback, but now he's also working with us and commentating. Everywhere you go in MMA, Henry Cejudo is kind of making a little mark. So I'm not overly surprised. He was the youngest Olympic champion in American history when he captured the gold medal. 2008, he was only 20 years old, never even wrestled through college, went right from high school to the senior level, won the Olympic Games. So, I mean, this guy is cloaked in success. So to see him be good at yet one more thing, maybe it wasn't a surprise, but it was pleasant nonetheless.
Yeah, no doubt. What's your gut say as far as where he lands? Because I think he will fight again. It seems like he's kind of in a game of chicken right now with Dana White. Dana doesn't want to give up any sort of ground. Henry doesn't want to give up any sort of ground. Obviously, Ali there in the middle as well. But where do you feel like he'll land? Do you think there's a chance he ends up in Eagle actually fighting in the same cage that he's commentating for?
I had not considered that. If his UFC contract was to expire, which takes a meaningful amount of time. I mean, I want to say, I heard that George St. Pierre still has a few months left, and George's last fight was 2017. It's one of those things where I think there's plus 5 years on it. So I don't know how much I would predict that, but I do know that Henry wants to come back. I've asked him straight up, Henry, are you working me? Is this something so that I go out and tell people you're coming back because you're just having fun in the media? And I even made a deal with him. I said, I'll continue to do it, but privately, just share with me. Is that what we're doing? He said no. And I believed him. I believed him because of the level of shape that he was in, how fit, how trim he looked. I follow his social media, Instagram. I see that he's in the room working with these athletes that he's trained. He's covered in sweat. He's looking great. MMA is just not something anybody does as a hobby. If somebody wants to get in shape, I mean, there's aerobics classes and there's jazzercise. There's a lot of things you do. I don't know any hobbyists that do MMA. So I do personally believe that he's preparing for something. Now, I also think that you touched on the head. He wants Dana to make some concessions, and Dana's going to look at him and go, we have a contract. Our time to discuss concessions ended when you signed that contract. And I don't know that Henry is willing or quite prepared yet. And the competitor in him, the guy that won the Olympics, took on 5 guys in 2 days and got zero money for it. The competitor still exists. The competitor would like to go out and compete, but now the business side of it comes in. And if those two can't meet somewhere in the middle, I don't really think there's anything to talk about. I can't begrudge Dana for being willing to honor an agreement that's in place. I don't think Dana's wrong there. I think Dana's right.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I could see it both sides. Definitely. I think he brings a lot to the table. I think what he's cultivated, why he's been gone as far as the social media, just being out there way more than he ever was. I think it's got fans wanting to see it, even if he's in that villain role and they just want to see him get his ass kicked. People want to see Cejudo back in the cage. So I think we'll see it. But I definitely understand, man. He's a family guy too. He is loving his little baby right now, and you definitely got to understand where he's coming from there. Colby Covington, this guy, man, he continues to win on an incredible roll right now. It seems like, the sky is still the limit for Colby. What do you see next for Colby Covington right now?
Tough spot because he is the only clear number one ranked and nobody objecting number one contender in any division in any organization that does not get a world title fight. I mean, that's a very unique spot, and it's a very tough one. A lot of guys that are number one contenders, they slip, they come back in their next fight, right? Whatever goes up must come down. I see guys, they fight for titles, and they never look the same again. It's just not that same motivation. It's not the same rush. It's not the same stakes, and their career ends. That did not happen with Colby. He's coming out. He goes 1-1 in his last two, one against the Undisputed champion, one against the BMF champion. He gets no belt. I mean, it's like the time that Colby Covington was the interim champion, never lost, woke up one day and is no longer the interim champion. Like, that's not a riddle I'm doing right there with wordplay. That happened. So one thing about this sport is we are going to fiercely adhere to whatever rules we make up on the spot. It's one of those things. And I think that Colby is adapting very well, but I do think, he calls out Kamaru Usman, he calls out Dustin Poirier, and he calls out Israel Adesanya. And those are three hard call-outs. The only thing those guys have in common is each one of them has been a world champion. I mean, Colby's looking for something really hard to do. He would just also like it to be big. And I think he's got the right as he's the number one contender, but he doesn't get a fight for a belt. Man, that's a tough spot he's in.
What do you think of the way he's kind of woven politics into his career? I think it's interesting because I don't think it's really something that we had ever really seen before. When it comes to MMA, it's almost like it was kind of devoid of politics. I mean, Dana would occasionally say something, and he was obviously very pro Donald Trump and that sort of thing. That being said, it's not something we've really seen woven into a current fighter. However, Colby has done that, and it's made him extremely hated, extremely in the news, extremely, it has a lot of exposure. What have you made of that?
He's a heel. I mean, He is a conservative. I've known him since he was a little boy. His whole family's conservative. That part of it is true. But I don't think he ever would have brought politics into it had he not seen an angle of the most polarizing political figure ever who he happened to become friends with. I mean, it was a really interesting story. It was just so on brand. I mean, there was kids getting suspended from school for wearing their red MAGA hats. Colby's going on ESPN wearing it. Nobody could tell him to take it off. He's doing interviews with me and everybody else wearing it. I mean, he's looking for that kind of heat. It's perfect. I think he's a great performer myself. The fact that even when he got done with Kamaru Usman, I mean, there is a bond that forms when you fight, particularly when you fight your heart out. They did it not once, but twice. You bury the hatchet. You just do. It's bigger than everybody. There's nothing that you could do, no matter what a rough character you are. There's just a bond. Colby refused, at least while the cameras were rolling. He forgot nothing. He buried nothing. Nothing has been proved. I mean, he's an ultimate performer. I think he's doing it as well as it's ever been done.
Real quick on Jon Jones. Jon looking at it, saying summer, maybe early fall for his return, wanting to get an interim shot, possibly just a straight title shot. Who knows? You and Jon have, gone back and forth on social media time and time. You've said it on your videos. He's made posts. What do you make, just putting all that aside, as much as we could fan those flames, what do you make of where Jon is in his career? And what do you kind of think he has left in the tank? What do you think we're going to get out of Jon Jones in the next few years?
I mean, look, I think that Jon's the best fighter in the world. I don't think he ever needs, it was psychological where he thought he needed to weigh 240 pounds. Now, that was an arbitrary number. He had never weighed 240. He didn't know how he would do, but he picked that number. And if you believe it, it becomes true, particularly in sport. If you think I didn't work hard enough, then you did it. If you think I did work hard enough, then you did. And it doesn't really matter what work you put in. If you believe it, it becomes real. And I only say that because 240 was his number and he put his life on hold and he dedicated to it. And gaining weight is very hard. Most people only try to lose weight. They can tell you how hard it is. Gaining weight is equally as hard in a different direction. And he did it. And I know people that are in the room with him. I spoke to Jaden Cox, who's a multiple-time world wrestling champion. He had beautiful things to say about Jon's, not only his skills, but his work ethic. Henry Cejudo talks about not only Jon's skills, but his work ethic. I thought Jon could beat every heavyweight in the world when he weighed to cut to 205, which was right around 222, 223. I thought that he could have just gone up to heavyweight any given night. He's been in the room with a number, talk about the practice room, but a number of not only heavyweights, successful heavyweights, even heavyweight champions. I've never heard of Jon losing a round. And these are from rumors from people that hate Jon the most. Nobody hates Jon more than his own teammates because it's jealousy. He works the least hard and makes the most money. It's one of those things. They couldn't even say that they saw him lose a round. Jon was wearing these guys out. So now Jon at 240, where he believes that he needs to be, I mean, I think that's a pretty scary proposition. Stipe is the greatest heavyweight that we've ever seen. Stipe is also going through a bulking phase. I talked to Stipe's wife. Stipe learned a lesson fighting Francis that he doesn't have quite enough mass. He's going to put 20 pounds on himself. He has since succeeded. I talked to her 2 weeks ago. He has succeeded. He's weighing about 255. So all of a sudden, it still is a smaller Jon Jones, which is a big piece of this story. We understand that Jon is better than everybody. He's proven that time and time again. Can weight make up the gap? So as long as he fights a guy that does weigh more than him, even if it's only by 5 or 10 pounds, we at least fulfill that part of the imagination with the viewer. I think that's the fight to make. I believe that fight is made. I think the only thing they haven't announced it because they can't decide if it's for the undisputed title or if they're going to interim the heavyweight title while they deal with Francis. I think that's the only delay. And I feel very comfortable in guaranteeing you will see Stipe versus Jones in 2022.
Well, that's exciting. That is a fight that I think anybody can get excited about. So I kind of hope it comes true. And I mean, you're usually not wrong about these things, Chael. Let's just get real about it. Cain Velasquez. I mean, what hasn't been said, right? You know, I had a chance to interview Cain right here on the show. One of the most humble guys. We came from the same JUCO, which also produced Colby Covington as well. And Jon Jones. That being said, Cain, what a guy, man. What a delightful guy to deal with. But when you look at the details going into this, you kind of understand, because I think what Dana said was true. Everybody says, well, that's what I would do if something happened to my kid. Well, Cain went and did it. Where do you land on it? Obviously, you're a father too, so I would totally understand where you're going to go with this, but at the same time, very, very reckless. Somebody else could have been killed in the crossfire. It was a dangerous thing what he did. Just give me your thoughts on the whole situation.
The guy says he didn't do it. And by the law, he is not charged. He's not convicted of anything. By the law, he did not do it as of now. And Cain shot the wrong guy. I can't get around that. I can't make any exception. I mean, it's really important of the order of events. And a father wanting revenge, he walks in, he catches it. There's a number of things. That's not what happened here. You had the word of somebody he loved who was his own child. That's very tough for a parent to think there's any kind of misconceptions here, but you still have an innocent man, and you have yet another person who was actually shot. It's a problem. It's a big problem for Cain, and I don't want it to be, because I think of Cain the same as that you just described. He's a very gentle man. He is not a threat to society. He's a wonderful person. He cares about his family. He worked hard. He's a success story. This was a bad moment. We could take that moment back, but I do have one problem just in the world of fairness where people say, well, that's what I would have done. The guy accused says he didn't do it. And we do not have a jury yet to say otherwise. We don't even have police detectives that are gathering evidence and think, right? I mean, it's a very tough spot. And if you do just take words, it's tough. There's two sides of the story. And I don't think that anybody gets to decide who's right or wrong. Our system says that 12 people not smart enough to get out of jury duty are the only ones that can make that decision. He shot the wrong guy. That's not great news. And that's very fair by me. And I'm a little bit disappointed with our own community that's standing up and saying, well, I would have done the same thing. You would have shot a random person. You're not, first off, you got bad aim. And second off, you're going to just convict a guy based on you haven't even looked into it. We don't have any evidence. We got people out there known as the police departments. This is what they do. You got to let that process pay out, man. This was premature.
Do you feel like he'll end up doing jail time? I mean, what's your gut say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a way to go. Number one is that the guy comes out and says he did it. And number two, the whole family comes in of the perpetrator and says, please let him go. This was a terrible thing that we did, and I'm going to seek help. I understand his reaction. We want to go. That's not going to happen. But in the vein that did, and whether that came through the form of incentive or anything else, that's right. The guy isn't even convicted. Even if he comes forward, you're going to say, I shot at 3 people because somebody that I call son told me what. It's weird, man. I mean, I want to make a case for him. I want to get him out now. If I had the power to do it, to hell with the rules. I know what I personally think happened, and I know how I would react to it. And I think that Dana served Cain very well with that simple statement. When Dana said everything that I read, people say this is what they do. Cain actually went out and did it. I think that you're going to need to find a jury that's very sympathetic to that. However, a jury is going to be made up of people like me. We have to know that the guy at least did do it, and we don't know that at this point. Imagine if he didn't. That's all I'm saying. Imagine if he didn't and Cain would have killed him. Now he never gets to clear his name. He never gets to tell his story. It's a really tough spot. That's the reason. Vigilante stuff is very dangerous for this very reason. We don't know, which is why there's a process in place, and it's far from a perfect process, but it's still our process. You got to respect it and let it play out.
One quick note here, more newsworthy stuff before we kind of get into the meat of this. We just lost a fellow bad guy. So we lost Scott Hall. Unfortunately suffered 3 heart attacks after breaking his hip. You got Bad Guy right there behind you, Bad Guy Inc. It's part of who you are. That was also part of who Scott Hall was in his career. He was the bad guy. Let me ask you a couple things. First of all, did you ever come across Scott? Did you ever get to know him? And how did the news hit you when you found out about it?
Well, it wasn't a surprise. I stay in pretty good contact with X-Pac. And there was just some lifestyle and just some behaviors that were leading towards this, almost as though this was the desired result. In all fairness, almost as though it was a suicide. He knew what would happen if he kept living this way, and he kept living this way.
Okay.
That doesn't make it any easier. This was tough. I don't think it was tough on Scott, but I also don't think that Scott knows what he means to other people like you and me, right? Yeah. People that came up that were kids watching him on TV when he was bigger than life. I don't know that he still knew that he was carrying a torch for people that were maybe strangers to him. I did get to meet him. I got to meet him face to face at a after party of WrestleMania 2014. We had a very brief interaction, but you could imagine what that meant to me, man. I was excited to meet him. And then I made contact with him. I got his phone number there, and he came on my podcast. We had a nice hour-long conversation.
Wow. Okay.
And then I've stayed in contact with him a little bit through text messages. And I don't know if he was working a character or if he didn't like me or if he didn't have it saved in his phone, but he was not overly pleasant to me. But I've chosen to believe that's because he didn't know who he was talking to. So I guess he's a nice guy for responding at all. But I kind of got a chuckle at it. I even screenshot it and I sent it to X-Pac. And, you know, it's one of those things where we still found a way to make it fun, but he was fun. I just don't know that he has any idea of how many people that really did admire and appreciate what he was able to do.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Was there kind of a memory that you can remember specifically out of his career that you really enjoyed?
Oh, well, come on. The ladder match with Shawn Michaels.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
You know, he was also just cool. I got to put Nash in that same category. Like, those guys were cool. And usually when you're that big, you know, you stand out from society. You're a little bit awkward. You're used to, those guys were cool. They were cool, big guys. And it was a big deal. There's a story on Hall. I, of course, wasn't there for it, but I read about it. Nash is the one that told it. And Nash said that he and Scott were doing a dark match somewhere, which the vernacular for our fans just means it's not on television. You got to be in the house to see it. So they're doing a house show, and it's against some tag team, and they lose. Scott specifically gets pinned 1, 2, 3. He goes on to television, and he tells the world, we just wrestled these guys 2 days ago in St. Louis, and we beat them. We'll beat them again next time we wrestle. So they get in the back, and the guy comes up to him and says, Scott, we beat you. Why would you possibly tell the audience you won? And Scott Hall said, I'm a bad guy, and bad guys lie. And I loved it. I remember that, and I loved it. And Scott's right. He went into business for himself, and I support it.
Oh, man. What a character. What a life that he had. And just so many great moments. I did a lot of nostalgic thinking, a lot of video. I put the WrestleMania match on for my son and I, and we actually sat and watched it, and he was into it. So that was a lot of fun.
He was a big guy from Minneapolis who came out and told people, you ain't even Cuban, man. That is funny. That is awesome. I sat behind Sheamus one time on an airplane, and I shoulder tapped him, and he didn't know how I shoulder tapped. Said, I happen to know who you are. By the way, I want you to work an African angle. I want you to come out and be the blackest guy on TV, right? Because he's you know who Sheamus is.
Of course, yeah.
Funny. And you'll remember when they did that with Akeem, the African Dream. That
one-man gang, yep.
And Sheamus was very sweet to me. He thought I was a very weird guy. He wanted nothing to do with me. He wanted me to be quiet. but he at least did listen to me while I made the pitch before he ignored it.
It's a great story. It's a great story. Yeah. Yeah. The one man gang and Akeem, the African dream. Wow. That was quite the transformation. They said that was actually a rib on Dusty Rhodes, but they've never fully confirmed that. That being said, let's talk a little bit about amateur wrestling and collegiate wrestling, something I know that you're extremely passionate about. And the reason why I know you're extremely passionate about it is because I've been hanging out with you at these Eagle shows, and that's all you seem to want to talk about. And you're talking to Ray Flores about it, and you're talking to Cejudo about it, and you're watching it on your phone nonstop. And, I have a few questions about that because obviously it's one of those sports that when the Olympics roll around, people pay attention to it a little bit. There's been a few moments in Olympic history where people get real excited. They remember the Kurt Angle situation, where he broke his neck and then goes on to win. It's still one of those memories that's etched into all sports history. That being said, it's still one of the sports that doesn't get a whole lot of respect on a mainstream front at all. What do you think needs to happen for wrestling to get more attention? Is it the presentation? Is it something that they can do? Because there's so much great talent out there. It's really exciting to watch some of these guys, your Gable Steveson and Jordan Burroughs and some of these guys that are absolutely incredible. It's fun to watch them. What do you think they need to do presentation-wise to get more attention on the sport?
I love the word that you're saying, presentation. We just simply don't have the leadership in wrestling. They are not incentivized. You look at all the Division I college coaches. I mean, I could put on a wrestling event and sell out any arena in the world. It's going to cost me a fortune. And I'm going to have to get guys there, and I'm going to have to make sure they make weight. Then I'm going to have to get them all in the same uniform. Then I'm going to have to get referees there. Every college in the country has that guaranteed. You are guaranteed 10 guys with skills on weight in matching uniforms. You are guaranteed another 10 in opposite uniforms on weight show up, and so will an official. It is the easiest event in the world to put on, but there is not a wrestler amongst us that is a promoter. They don't know anything about it. You go look at State College, Cael Sanderson, who sells out in advance, just like they do football. He will sell out a season of wrestling. It's the only college in the country that does it. His presentation is different. He's got a raised mat. He's got the lights coming down. He's got the spotlight on. He's got the smoke and the mirrors, and he's got the music playing. It's an actual show. Everybody else puts on a show. They can't get $10 and get 500 people to walk through the door. And then they wonder why. You don't deserve it. If you roll out a mat over a hardwood floor and set up 12 chairs on either side, you don't deserve a sold out house. Every college in this country gets what they deserve, which is jack crap, because they don't do jack crap. It is shocking to me how they could look around and wonder why they're not front page news. Well, gee, coach, what are you wearing? You're wearing your school's uniform. You're wearing sweats. Is that what somebody on the front page wears? Let's grab the paper. Here, show me. Show me on the front page somebody that's wearing what you're wearing. They're a bunch of fools. They don't deserve anything. And frankly, they don't care. They're a loss. Wrestling, which is my favorite sport, is a loss to the university. If you are attached to a team that's got either good football and or men's basketball, you get to exist at a $600,000 deficit. If I was the coach of any program, I would never take a penny from the school. I would bring all that money in. I would hand them a surplus every single year. They don't know what they're doing. They don't deserve any different. Then people that want to throw wrestling, you can't promote a tournament. Promoting a tournament is extremely hard because now you can't promise a matchup. You don't know who's going to make it through for sure. So tournaments are tough, but dual meets are not. Dual meets are set. They're guaranteed. You can have posters. You can have commercials. You can pull all the bells and whistles for marketing. You can do 2-for-1s, and it's kid night, and it's hot dog night. You can do every promotion that every other sport in the world does that sells tickets except this one because you're lazy and you're stupid. And I'm talking to the coaches, not you, partner.
Wow, you said a lot there, Chael, and I could tell you wanted to get that one off of your chest, so I'm glad that I asked it. That being said, you said there's not a promoter amongst us. Well, you do promote shows, Chael. I mean, hopefully you don't forget that. You've promoted a lot of shows up there in the Northwest. Obviously, Submission Underground, still hot as ever. You've brought in a lot of UFC talent. There's been some incredible matchups that you've had there on Submission Underground. So there is a promoter within your ranks, and his name is Chael Sonnen. So what's holding you back?
Well, I appreciate that. And I have a very big interest in getting into wrestling. I wouldn't change anything, though. If I ever made that for and I got into wrestling, just so you understand, I would make it wrestling. There's been promotions that have come and gone in the last 10 years. Every one of them had to jerk the rules around. One of them, it was simple. You're not going to wear singlets. You're going to wear shorts with no shirt, or you could wear shorts with a tight, I think they call it a rash guard. Well, now it doesn't look the same. It's just weird. Well, these guys are going to go collegiate, but these guys are going to go freestyle. Oh, by the way, all the matches are going to be 3 3-minute rounds. Well, a wrestling match isn't 3 3-minute rounds anywhere in the world. If you change one rule, you just change the sport. If you change the weight class, you just change the sport. Why would you not take the adopted rules by the governing body, which in this case is UWW, and apply them? It's very simple and it's very basic. Nobody would put on a volleyball tournament and go, but 3 teams are playing at the same time. It's going to be a triangle instead of 2. That's not volleyball. That's something else. Nobody would be stupid enough to do that except in our sport of wrestling. And if I was the athletic director of any department, any coach that I had, $600,000 to run your team, I'll give you 4. You're going to find the other 2. I don't care how you do it, fundraise it, golf event it, or sell the goddamn tickets since I'm giving you a venue anyway, you idiots. They don't deserve it, but they're not incentivized. They don't look at it like that. They're a humble sport. Let's just shake somebody's hand and let's walk away, ho hum, and hopefully mom and dad and grandma come out. It's shocking to me how bad that they do, but that no athletic director is putting the screws to them. You think an athletic director is going to let the football coach get away with an empty stadium? It would never happen. Now, I realize that the tickets come a little bit easier, but it's very different. It's an entire event. I used to go to these football games. I've never seen a football game in my life, but I used to go to them because they have something called a pre-funk. It's something called a tailgate where people are barbecuing. You got this party going on. You got mascots walking around. You got bets being made before the game ever even begins. Then when the game's done, people go and fill up the bars. They fill up the hotel. I mean, it turns into a whole weekend thing. Wrestling, you got about an hour and 40 minutes. You got some announcer that can barely say their names, that can't get the weight class or the high school right. You don't deserve to sell any tickets. You guys are terrible, but you don't have to be. You're guaranteed a team on weight with skills in matching uniforms. There has never been a sport handed more, guaranteed handed what wrestling's handed, and they can do nothing with it. It is a group of dum-dums.
Well, I say that by the end of 2022, you'll have this thing figured out, Chael. I have a feeling you're going to get this thing figured out. Maybe it happens in the FlexCast arena. I mean, why not? Our leader, or the guy that runs thing, obviously grew up wrestling, loves wrestling. And from what I understand, they want to get some different contests, some different competitions going on. So maybe something happens in the FlexCast arena.
Well, and we're in talks. We're in talks with Khabib right now to bring Submission Underground to the FlexCast arena. Ooh, so I mean, that is a full production space. This is a new business model. I personally agree with it. I personally have disagreed with going on the road like the traveling circus. I mean, people think the argument there for why you go on the road is to make it international business, to get into markets and get the media behind it, build a star and cultivate and then move on to the next town. I don't disagree with that, but Saturday Night Live is an international business and they never leave New York City, not one single time. So I like the idea of having a designated space. Bellator did it. The Mohegan Sun put on some of their best events ever. Dana's now stepped it up even further with having the Apex, and now you got the FlexCast arena. I mean, I like it. Paul Heyman did that with ECW, where he got a building, and this is the building where you hold the shows. I get that, and it makes sense.
And I've caught wind that they were even talking about Khabib and GSP doing something. I kind of caught wind of that. That was kind of a rumor floating around. You think we'll see Khabib compete again? Obviously not in MMA. He's made that proclamation. I think he'll absolutely stick to it, just because that's the type of guy that he is. You think we'll see him back in competition again, though?
Not with anything that we know now. Like, there's no amount of money that will get Khabib back, and there's no opponent will get Khabib back.
Not with wrestling, though? Wrestling or grappling?
Well, that's the thing. You start changing the rules, maybe you start changing the deal that Khabib made with himself. And another part of it is the closest Khabib ever got, ever, in 2 years to saying I might come back, was 1 week ago. It had to do with Islam and Conor. And Khabib said, I want Islam to get the fight with Conor, and to sweeten the pot, if Conor can beat Islam, I will come back and avenge that against Conor. That's the closest Khabib has ever been, but it's going to be something like that. He does not operate like other people. He's not about the success. He's not trying to meet girls around town. He's not trying to do a bunch of pictures with guys. He's not trying to make money. The thing that makes Khabib beat is very different, and it's a motivation and love to his team. So perhaps he is right. The only way you're going to get him back is to upset the team, and Big Brother's going to have to come in. I don't think we're going to get to that point. But if anything that Khabib has told us, and we can take that man at his word, that's the closest he's been to hedging.
I know that he even did some online stuff, some virtual fighting, NFT space. I don't know how far you are into that, but I believe he did a virtual boxing fight with Max Holloway, and you had to purchase a token. And I still, I'm in VR, I'm in the VR business, but I can't get my mind around NFTs and this whole world yet. But maybe they virtually fight. Hey, I'd watch it.
Cyrus, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you can't quit thinking about it, 1 is you've already forgot. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you secretly processing that $40,000 fee that I get? Are you going like, hey, is he serious? Was he joking? Is it more? Is it less? Like, how much as we're talking is that still playing in your head?
Well, to just put it out there, I just got a nice raise, so I'm trying not to be greedy. I'm very happy with my situation. Would 40,000 an event be fantastic? Absolutely, it would. But I don't come with all the decorations and all the accomplishments of one Chael Sonnen. So I totally understand the situation. It's all.
I was just wondering. You've answered. I'll put you at a 5. How about a 5?
5. That sounds about right. My wife would probably be closer to a 9 or a 10. That being said, let's talk about a little about one of your fights, because that's something I wanted to do with you. I wanted to kind of dig in deeper on one of your fights, and there's none bigger than the matchup against Anderson the first time around, fighting for the middleweight championship. And I just want to go a little bit deeper with you on that one. And, prior to that, you make the return to the UFC. You beat Dan Miller, Okami, and Marquardt. You get those wins. You get the Silva fight. What was that like as far as, I just want to know training camp wise. I want to know training partners. Kind of give me a little, look behind the scenes on getting ready to fight who a lot of people still consider the greatest of all time. A lot of people hold him in that regard. What was that like for you getting ready for that fight?
I did not enjoy it one bit. If I have any regret about my career as a whole, it's that I never enjoyed it. It was so stressful. It was, you make it through one fight, great. All that does is qualify you for the next one. Get a couple of days to recover till you're back in the gym 2 and 3 times a day. I mean, every day you're sore. Then when the actual camp started, all that camp meant for me, I went to practice twice a day, every day, no matter what. Camp, quotations, meant the weight cut for me. So I was having to cannibalize my body, right? I'm taking testosterone to get muscle. I'm not eating food to lose muscle. It's this yin and yang. It was so difficult to get to 185 pounds. And I never enjoyed any of it. I got a call one day. It's the first time Dana White had ever called me. He never even said my name right. He'd go to press conference and talk about Chael Sonnen. He calls me up and says, it's Dana. I didn't have his number in my phone. He says, hey, it's Dana. And he says, do you want to fight Anderson Silva? And I said, yeah. And he said, good, because I just went on Sports Center and announced it. So I was headed to the gym. This whole thing was the fight. When I get to the parking lot of the gym, they all knew about it. But it was just one of those things where, okay, great. I was going to practice anyway. Let's get this down. Let's see where my weight's at. There wasn't a lot of money on the line. It wasn't going to be a life-changing fight. It was all of these things. It was just the next fight. And, when I look back at that moment, or even the media tour, the sold-out arena, my name's in the marquee, all of these things that I never experienced before, I wish I could have enjoyed it, but I didn't. It was just this stressful mess. I remember coming out of the fight, and the very first person I saw was Joe Silva, and Joe Silva personally thought I was boring. Now, he didn't say that to hurt my feelings. He said that to help me. Chael, if I'm going to keep you on a main card, if I'm going to keep you in certain spots, there's certain activity that I need from you. And I just remember nothing happened in that fight with Anderson Silva. I never hit him. He never hit me. We just laid there. I came out of the ring, and I shook his hand, and I said, I'm sorry. And I meant it. And I went in the back, and they brought me a bonus. And bonuses back then were 65 grand. They're 50 now. They handed it to me, and the guy that handed it to me said, Lorenzo and Dana want you to have this. And I remember it was fight of the night, and I remember thinking, they just feel bad for me. That was a terrible fight, but they feel bad for me. In hindsight, it went on to win Fight of the Year. We got recognized by the community at the World MMA Awards, was Fight of the Night for that night. The reason I tell you that I apologize, that's how little I knew about the moment. I was not in the moment. I was somewhere else. I was observing. I was in this. I was so scared of Anderson Silva that I was so focused. I had such an urgency. I got to get him down. I got to hit him. I got to keep him down. I got to keep hitting him. That I lost track. I didn't know what round we were in. I didn't know that I'd landed a bunch of points. I really didn't know anything about that night. I just came out and I was defeated, and it was on to the next one. I wasn't too down in the dumps. I never got high. I never got down because it was just on to the next one. And then all of a sudden my career was gone. I'd look back and go, man, those were some cool moments. I wish I could have been there for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes by really fast. I can imagine. With the training camp though, did you have anybody in the camp kind of trying to imitate Anderson? What did that look like as far as like some of your training partners and stuff, getting you ready for that?
My number one training partner for Anderson was a guy named Zach George. And Zach's a very good friend of mine and a very good fighter. He fights at 145 pounds. And I never thought anything of it. I go to practice. I worked out with whoever was there. And we usually had a room full of pretty good, but for whatever reason, leading into that fight, I'd show up at 3:00. There'd be no coaches. The coaches wouldn't be there. And then it would just be Zach. So it was day after day after day of me and Zach. And the UFC even came out and filmed it for their, I think they call it a countdown show.
Sure.
And they went back and edited it, and they called us and said, we can't use this. They said, you look ridiculous. You're a giant taking on, a guy that 50 pounds smaller than you. I never thought anything of it. I never thought, oh, my partner's too small. That was just the guy that was there. And so it was one of those things where if I look back, maybe there was some better things I could have done with the training. I didn't have the money to do them. We weren't in a situation. We had a lot of success at Team Quest. I really believed in Team Quest. Looking back and knowing what I know now, I see where we could have all done a number of things differently. But at that time, Clayton wasn't in charge yet. Matt Lindland was still running the show for me. I did what I was told to do, and I believed in it.
When you were inside the octagon with Silva, I know you said it went by so fast. Obviously, you were dialed in. You just had to get him down. Can you kind of give an idea of what it was like being in there with him, just his movement, the way he moves, obviously like nobody else that's really ever been in the octagon. What was it like kind of standing across the octagon from Anderson?
Yeah, and again, I think if I could go back knowing what I think that would have been an amazing experience. Bruce Buffer announcing us and all of these. I remember Bruce was announcing us, and I pointed at him and said, shut the F up and get out of here, Bruce. And I was just trying to stay in character, right? I'm trying to talk myself into something.
Sure.
I remember saying, get out of here. And I remember the look on Bruce's face, like it really hurt his feelings. I remember that threw me off. I was like, no, Bruce, this is part of the show. Now scoot, man, I got to deal with this guy behind you. But I never really saw Anderson in there. I never really saw his movements. I resented him for all that stuff. I don't now. I thank Anderson Silva, but at the time I had a legitimate dislike for Anderson. I didn't like the way he moved. I didn't like the way he talked. I didn't like the way he fought. I didn't like any of that stuff. And I didn't get it. I didn't get why the media thought that was good. What, a guy's punching and kicking people in the middle of a fist fight? I would expect that. All the other guys are scared of it. I expect him to do it. I'm a national champion of wrestling. He's never had a wrestling match. This one, I already got this one figured out. This got figured out in 1993 with some other boys that I used to watch. I'm going to floor this guy. And I just remember thinking that it didn't matter how he was going to move. Eventually, I'm going to get my hands on him. I'm going to put him on his back. And I really believed that. I truly believed that at the time. Now, what was going to happen once he got to his back, that was anybody's guess. I knew I had to, keep my elbows in and posture up and land my shots and keep him down and pass guard a little bit. I mean, there was a lot that was going to go into it. But as far as can I get my hands on him and get him down the canvas, you bet your ass I can.
Did you guys ever do that barbecue together? I remember that was
No, he invited me to a barbecue. That was very sweet. If I had gone to the barbecue, I would have got myself a steak, medium rare, just the way I like it.
You think the fight ends up in the fight wing of the Hall of Fame?
It could. I don't know. I was just at the PI and I was looking at some of those guys that were up there. It was a real honor. What a beautiful facility, the PI.
Amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The staff that runs that, not to mention the technology in the facility. This was like going to Disneyland. I am such a fan. I go up there. I got Marlon Moraes training over here, and I got Hazmat Chimaev and Latifi training over here. I mean, it was just a blast. I could have stayed there all day. I could have stayed there all week. When I was up there, I was the only fan in there. I'm going, do people not know this is going on? I would never leave if I didn't have to leave. So, but will it make the wing? It probably will. Someday it will probably be recognized. Anderson, at least, personally, will go into the Hall of Fame just for his own achievements.
Of course. Well, I mean, how much does that mean to you? Because I'm not the only person that would say this, but you certainly deserve to be in the UFC Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. How much does that mean to you? Is it something that you even think about? I know you're probably going to say no, but at the same time, what would that mean to you if you were to get that call?
I have never thought of it. It would mean a ton to me. The Hall of Fame, I know how I look at those guys. I look at them differently. There's something different about coming across that stage and getting that jacket. There's something about getting your name on a plaque that goes up on that wall that very few people are ever going to see. But it is the greatest honor that our industry bestows on somebody.
Sure.
And it's not something you can win. It's not something you can politic for. I was very good at the game of MMA. I understood how it worked, which meant I understood how to manipulate it. I don't know how to manipulate that one. I don't know who picks that or how you do it. And when or if I ever get that call, it will be a surprise. And it will be very pleasant.
I will say that compared to other Hall of Fames, it seems to be very selective when you talk about just individuals that go in. Obviously, the fight wing, that includes a lot more guys that wouldn't probably get in just on their individual achievements. that being said, it is one of those really selective Hall of Fames, which makes it feel a little bit more special than some other sports Hall of Fames. Do you agree?
I do agree. And I've never seen anybody go into that any way you want to do it that I disagreed with. Not one. Yep. In fact, most guys, when they win, and I thought, what in the hell took us so long to get them in there? So it really is an honor. And yeah, to answer your question, I don't know if that's in my future or not, but if you want to know how I would feel, yeah, I won't hide it. I would be very happy.
No doubt. No doubt.
My mother would be very proud.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's what it's all about. Make a mama proud. No doubt. Final questions here. Give me a misconception about Chael Sonnen. Something probably people think about you, but it's not actually true.
Okay, I don't have to have a steak medium rare. Like that got put out there, and then I go to restaurants and somebody sends me over a steak and they pick up the tab and it's very nice, but it doesn't have to be medium rare. It depends where you go. Like if you go to finer dining, say a Ruth's Chris or Morton's, their scale's a little bit on the redder side. Even Outback is a little on the redder side. You might want to make that thing medium before you send it over.
What's the best steak you've ever had? Where at?
Best steak I've ever had was actually made by my buddy Kevin Keeney. It was a teriyaki steak. He marinated teriyaki, but then he slow cooked it on something called a Traeger grill.
Yes.
And it was tri-tip specifically, but it was just wonderful. If you want to know just the best steakhouse, I'm gonna use a chain. Usually people don't like to hear chains, but if you find a steak that's better than Morton's, I would be surprised.
No doubt. Okay. Submission Underground. You got a lot of ventures going on. You got Eagle. You got Submission Underground. Still dealing with ESPN as well. How do you keep everything in order right now? How do you kind of make all this work? And obviously you're a family man as well. And I know your family means a lot to you. How do you balance it all out and make it all work?
And I appreciate you saying that. I got my little maniac over here.
Was he over there? Okay.
Freestyle wrestling Olympian sitting in the corner.
Nice.
He's writing me a sign that says, "Are you done yet?" All right. No, not yet. You want to come over?
We'll cut it short there. We'll cut it short.
I got him right off camera, but as far as making time, I got a lot of help. I married the right woman. I got very lucky there. A true partner, and I got great management. I have a lot of people that help me. People like you, by the way, that help the rest of us to look good, right? You were talking about you and Ray, and then I love to talk about wrestling. Well, you and Ray are the two professionals in the room. Henry and Kamar and I are sitting back trying to learn from you guys, but you and Ray do such a good job of putting everybody else over, that maybe that isn't always seen, but I do appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, well, that's an honor. It's an honor to be on this broadcast team because it's just incredible, all the names that are attached to it. And I think it's great what Eagle's doing with that. Final thing. I got to ask, starting this season, I got to take advantage of this. I need a hookup for a future guest. So I'm just going to hit you point blank on camera. Who can you send my way to be on In This Corner with Cyrus Fees?
All right, who can I get you? So a few, and I love to name drop. So don't anybody think I'm named. I admit that I'm a name drop. I'm from a small town. So if I meet somebody who's on television, something like that's a cool move for me. Some people say, oh, I don't care who's who. I do. It's a big deal if a little guy from a cow town like me in Westland, Oregon, knows somebody that was on the big screen. But you want to know who's a great guest? This might surprise you. Michael Rappaport is great.
Michael Rappaport?
He's a ton of fun to talk to, sometimes hard to reach. Ed O'Neill, he used to play Al Bundy, but he's a big fight guy. And I could tell you people from like Celebrity Apprentice or something like that, but as far as that really know the sport, I would encourage you to get in your wheelhouse with like a CM Punk, probably a perfect guy for you to talk to. And another one is X-Pac. X-Pac knows everything about fighting, man. He is
I'd love that. Man. That would be a blast. Well, I mean, listen, this is, I'm playing that card. So we'll talk off air if we can figure out our text situation. I don't know what's going on there. That being said, we'll email back and forth and we'll figure this thing out. But I just want to thank you for giving me the time. As always, go tend to your little man, and truly appreciate it, Joe.
Will do. I've had it with you and I've had it with Clint. Goodbye.
And there he is. Chael Sonnen, the one and only bad guy. Folks, make sure you check us out on all of your audio podcast platforms. And that's it. We'll see you next time right here on In This Corner with Cyrus Fees.